Welcome, Broncos country, to an episode of Altitude Advantage. I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez, and across the table we have our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla. There he is. You guys see him on YouTube. We're back in the podcast studio. The picks are in. Rookie minicamp coming up. 7 picks, 7 selections. The NFL draft is in the books. We can finally, breathe. I feel like we just stayed awake for 3 days.
That's right. Your first NFL draft.
Yes.
How was it? It's a little bit of a blur, but it's exciting. There's a lot going on, and it's a lot, but it's kind of like controlled chaos, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely is. I lost track of the hours of the day, times of the day. Next, I would just look outside and it was dark, and I was like, "Oh, it's time to go home." But if you missed any of the coverage, again, make sure you guys go on DenverBroncos.com for all the latest. Make sure you guys check out our YouTube channel, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. But what are your big takeaways from the weekend? We're gonna get into the picks and really get into the nitty gritty of all these things. But just initial thoughts, how you felt once that last pick was casted.
Yeah, I mean, big picture, I think the team, and it seems generic to say, right? But like it got better, and I think that this was a draft coming in that we knew there wasn't a ton of star power necessarily, right? Even before the draft, George Paton and Sean Payton said, listen, we don't have as many guys graded with top 10 grades as we do for picks between like 10 and 30. And we heard a lot about, hey, the strength of this draft is between rounds 2, 3, and maybe even 4. And what we saw the Broncos do was, one, they found one of those really talented guys in Jahdae Barron, and then they maneuvered around so that they could get the most guys in that sweet spot of the draft, if you will. And I know that coming in, fans were like, okay, you got to get a running back, you got to get a tight end, you got to get offensive weapons. I think what we saw from the Broncos overall was they focused on improving the football team as a whole. And the more I've sat with it, the more I've thought about it, especially with the Barron pick in round 1. I'm like, looking back, when Riley Moss goes down last year, that secondary struggled a little bit. And even when Moss came back and it was healthy, when you play these elite teams like or elite quarterbacks like a Mahomes, like a Herbert, Burrow, Allen, Lamar, like you need a strong secondary. And I think for the Broncos to take that next step, you've got to be able to hold up against those guys in the postseason. This is all about how do you take the next step in the postseason if you can get back there. So I liked that you did add these offensive weapons. I think, as we talked about right after the draft, Elisa, I liked that kind of day 1, day 2 was like these proven guys that you've seen the production from. And then day 3, and maybe even a little bit of Savion Jones there at the end of day 2 was, hey, here's traits that we like. And these guys can really become something instead of just picking the known commodity that has kind of this lower ceiling, if you will, maybe higher floor, lower ceiling. Like you found guys with traits that could be guys in this league. So overall, I come away encouraged. I think that the Broncos did a great job in free agency of filling needs so that they didn't have to chase guys here during the draft. And I think ultimately you end up with, hey, if you just continue to build this football team like this, that's how you stay good. That's how you stay competitive long term. It's not by chasing positions where the value isn't there. It's by making smart decisions. And something I wanted to say that I didn't mention when we did our analysis right after the draft was, especially George Paton, we've seen him now year in and year out find these guys. And if you were saying after 2021 that, hey, he found an all-pro in Quinn Miners out of Wisconsin Whitewater, if you were sitting there and saying that right away and you were saying, hey, Pat Surtain is the right pick over Justin Fields, kudos to you. But a lot of people nationally
did not feel that way.
Locally thought that, hey, what are they doing here? Yeah. And obviously when you have time on your side and you can look back and reflect, man, it really made sense, the decisions that George Paton made. And then you bring in Sean Payton, and in recent years you've gotten Marvin Mims and you've gotten Riley Moss in the 3rd round and you've got Nick Bonito. And so I think, and listen, I think it's fair, and I saw this on Twitter today. It's not bad to have opinions, right? But like, I think Sean Payton and George Paton, the way they've drafted, have earned kind of the saying, hey, I assume you're going to be right here until proven otherwise, as opposed to the other way around. And so, like, Pat Bryant was a guy that, and like you said, we'll talk pick by pick, but just one example, people said, hey, was that a guy that was a reach? Well, no, if they see Michael Thomas traits there, and we've seen them find good receivers in that round before, let's trust him here and trust that this is going to work out.
Well, I think you said it best. Just you're encouraged by what you saw, and I'm excited for what's to come because you brought up a really good point with how the Broncos did struggle when obviously Riley Moss went down, and then the stakes only got higher, right, as those weeks kind of went on, and you're trying to figure out move different pieces. Now, some guys did step up, and you like that, but you want to have your two solid guys. You want to have the guys, especially like you said, the receivers in the division are only getting bigger, only getting stronger. And obviously, Pat is a guy that you wish you could just duplicate all over the field. But you do want to get someone, I guess, is going to come in and absorb all of that. When I talked to George Payton, he mentioned about this draft was really important to get because they believe that they got better in all three phases of the game. And he's excited for rookie minicamp to come up because he said it's like Christmas for the GM and the scouts because you're going to see all the work, everything you watched on tape come to fruition and see how it actually looks when it's right in front of you. So I think all the different guys that were able to come in, I feel are going to fit well. Characteristics was one of it, traits, but also their leadership mindset, their ability to work within a team, adapt to new culture, playbook, things like that. I feel like all those things that aren't on film, I feel like George and Sean Payton both have a really good, like, spidey sense to figure out which guys are that. And obviously they're well respected in the NFL. Sean Payton has been in the league for a long time. You're going to trust what you can't see as the average football fan. Yeah,
definitely. And I bring this up a couple times now, but like I liked what Sean Payton said about they have the responsibility of this locker room that over the last 2 years, it hasn't just been talent. It's been like get guys that this matters to. And not to say that there haven't been guys that it mattered to like over the past 7-8 years as the Broncos struggled, but like it's got to be everybody. And it's got to be like the right type of guy in the locker room. And then once you have built that, which I think it's pretty clear the Broncos have built that, now you can't just throw anybody in there. You've got to have people whose it like matches and it fits. And so that's important. I think, kind of going through the picks real quick one by one, like Jahdae Barron is a great example of that. You can tell it matters to this guy. And you can, like, for him, he wants to be able to provide for his mom who's done so much for him, but then like he comes in and if he didn't win over the fan base during that 15-minute press conference, I don't know how you do.
I don't know how you're going to do it.
Because he was just so impressive at talking about how much this means to him, what he's going to do, how he's going to come in here. Plus he's best friends with Matthew McConaughey, so that helps, right? That adds to
Matthew
it.
Come to a game.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah, line that one up. But I think then from a football perspective, you're right. It could be, hey, is he that opposite corner? Does he go to nickel? Does he play, safety in a dime package? Like, I think just his ability to be moved around is going to be really helpful for this defense. We know how versatile Vance Joseph likes guys to be. And teams last year, someone pointed this out on Twitter, is a good point. Like, I think about in Cincy, there were times when they moved Jamar Chase into the slot to try to get him away from Pat. And to some degree, it worked. And when you saw Chase have success in that game, that's kind of how they did it. Now, hey, maybe you push him in. Can you afford to move Pat down into the slot? Or do you say, Pat, you stay outside on, say, T. Higgins. We're going to put Jahdae Barron on Jamar Chase in the slot. And, obviously you got to see how that works out, right? But I think having that that versatility is going to be a really big deal. That's what stands out to me, number one with him. And just the more I think about it, the more I feel like, that was a need, especially when you play Mahomes and like you want to go beat Josh Allen in the playoffs in Buffalo, like you're going to have to cover. And I know that game was close until the third quarter, but there were some times where like on big downs, Bills guys got away from him a little bit. Like, can this help that? Yeah, and I think you mentioned it, just like the way that he's able to play so many positions. When I talked to Jahdae, he mentioned that he's excited to just come in and learn. And he talked about, not only learning from Pat Surtain, but also the importance of just having this community. He said, I have a lot of guys on this team that I look up to. And we actually, during his press conference, we have a clip that we want to share with you guys of just how happy he is to be here with a lot of the Texas guys.
I've talked to a lot of guys. Patrick Surtain is an amazing player to play with. I've been watching his game, and I love the things that he can do. So just soaking a lot of knowledge from him and getting a lot of information from him is going to be big for me just to grow and mature at the next level. And then, playing with all the guys that I looked up to when I used to be a kid running around in Austin and just going to the games and watching them playing DKR from Brandon to PJ to Roach and all those guys. And then Sam Ehlinger, that was always my GOAT growing up, watching him. I used to go to his high school games and things like that. But just to have all those guys around, it's amazing to have my Texas boys with me too. So.
So I believe there's 5 guys played at Texas that are now here. You mentioned that Sean had joked like, no more. We're done. We're tapped out. We're tapped out.
Yeah, and Oklahoma, I think, was tied with Texas, and now I'm sure like Marvin and Nick are like, okay, well, let's get another Ben Powers, let's get another Oklahoma guy and even things up here.
Yeah, he's like, we need more help. But I think having that familiarity, and I think having guys that you look up to, and obviously guys you want to learn from, like Pat. When I spoke to Jahdae, he mentioned as what are one of your goals, because he's very big on visualization, very big on writing his goals. He said that he puts them on his mirror so that every morning when he wakes up, he has to be very accountable for himself for what he wants to do and what he's actually doing. And he said that he wants to do a few things. One, he wants to come in here and be himself. He said, being myself has got me this far. And he was like, I wore orange, now I'm wearing orange again. I wore cowboy hats, and I'm wearing cowboy hats again. Like, I'm excited to be here. I feel like it's meant to be. It's the perfect fit. But he also mentioned, like, it's also just the basics. And again, this is what we talked about, what you don't see on tape. And what I mean by that is he's like, I want to get with a vet I'm going to learn his schedule. What is he on time for? What is he, being involved in? His meal plan, his weight plan, his sleep schedule. Like, those are all the nitty-gritty details that the average football fan does not think about, how these players prepare to be the best on the field. So for him to come in and he's like, yeah, the playing side, like, the coaches are going to help me with that. My team's going to help me with that. But I need to know the mental side of this game on how to become better. And when you're a first-round pick, people expect a lot more from you than maybe other picks later in the draft. And so, for his sake, he ran a 4.3 at the NFL Combine at Texas in 2024. He has 67 tackles, 5 interceptions, 16 passes defended, 2.5 tackles for loss, and 1 sack in 16 games. And I think for him, I think he's very confident in his game, but that next level, which I think all rookies deal with, is the mental aspect of the toll that this takes. And I know that Bo Nix talked about that a little bit, of just how long the season is and how long of a year you have when you make it to the pros.
Yeah, definitely. And that'll be part of the transition for all these guys, right? And it does seem like part of what helps the Broncos rookies, because last year I think we saw guys contribute all the way toward the end, is that this first month, as Sean Payton has talked about, they run and they lift. They run and they lift. Some teams you go and you're in the playbook right away. You're having meetings. Like, Sean Payton has always been very clear, I don't want to have guys come back and feel like they're jumping into football season yet. There's plenty of time for that when you get to OTAs, when you get closer to the middle of May. For the first month, it's running and lifting. And so I think that helps a little bit of maybe like give these guys a mental break and get back in football shape, because you've been training for the combine, right? Not for playing NFL football. But the last couple years, especially from an injury standpoint, knock on wood, it seems like they've got a good plan in place to get these guys ready.
Yeah, and I think if you look at even back to the players served from the NFLPA, like high grades for like nutrition and training staff and things like that, because health is wealth when it comes to this league, especially later in the season, like when the Broncos had that late bye week this past season. Like, you want to make sure your guys are as stable as possible, but continue to going forward with these picks. A lot of big moves were made on the defensive side. A lot of trades were made during the draft to get, big defensive guys to come in. We got a guy from Alabama, LSU, kind of those big bodies to help out the defense. How do you see the defense how do you see the defense improve with this draft class?
Yeah, well, I think, starting with Savion Jones, right, who just has a relentless motor. George Payton talks about how hard he plays, how fast he plays coming in from LSU. Can join that D-line group. That's a good group, right? Like, the Broncos made that group a lot better last year. And you brought DJ Jones back this year. You've still got JFM. You've got Zach Allen, Malcolm Roach.
You still got really good guys on his team.
As George Payton said, like, Malcolm Roach might have been our best free agent addition. And now you add Jones to that group that also includes currently like a Wazirike, a Henningsen, like some other guys as well, Jordan Jackson, I believe. So you've got guys there, but this is a talent pick, right? Like, Jones has that ability, and you've got some guys like over the next couple of years that are not old necessarily, but like getting up there a little bit. So I think the infusion of young talent is helpful along the defensive line. And then you talk about Q Robinson, a guy that can come in and immediately contribute on special teams. And, you think about kind of Tremont Smith, for example, left in free agency. So you need to find some of these core special teamers. He's a guy that can be that immediately. But then I also think you see these draft analysts on Twitter say, like, hey, That's one of my favorite picks on day 3 because he's got that upside. George Payton said he played behind Dallas Turner at Alabama, right? Like he played behind some of these guys where maybe didn't have as many opportunities. Then finally, his last year, he got them, was playing really well, finally started to see kind of those sack numbers go up. Unfortunately, had an injury and caused him to miss the final 4 games, but he said he's back from that. He's all good. So excited to see him. So, yeah, defensively, I think adding those 2 guys, adding Barron. Obviously, Barron is a guy who I think is a day 1 contributor. We'll see kind of how these other guys come along, you know, when are they able to contribute. But you've always got to be like, I think the value of adding these day 2, day 3 guys is that you don't then end up with a huge need down the road because you've addressed it. Like if you spent your first 5 picks on the offensive side of the ball, might be great for this season, might add a little boost, maybe you find one more weapon, I don't know, but you put yourself in a tough spot like a year from now when you're like, well, now we got to do that on the defensive side of the ball. So
you got to play the long game.
I do think in this division, having a good defense is paramount. And as George told you, like I think they made a good defense even better.
Yeah, and I think the picks that were made on the defensive side are obviously going to boost up. And I even the way that this defense plays and the way they just kind of all bring the best out of each other. I remember when I had talked to DJ Jones and Malcolm Roach during the season, I asked them, like, how do you guys put so much pressure on the quarterback? How do you guys find ways to just disrupt whatever offense is in front of you? And the answer was like simple. He's like, we just play for each other. Like we play for the guy next to us. And because we always help each other, it's not about numbers, not about stats, it's about the win. And when you get guys that have those characteristics, want to come in and have that same mentality of like, it's not the individual accolades that I care about. I care about putting W's on the board, going to the playoffs, and bringing back a championship caliber team to Denver. And I think that mindset was what was really built when Sean Payton was here. But I also think that the offense is going to help with that because the offense also got better with some additions in free agency as well as in the draft. So how do you see this offense taking that next step?
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, you mentioned free agency, like having Greenlaw, having Hufanga, like those are big deals too, right? Like those are impact players as well on the defensive side of the ball. I think offensively, I mean, probably the biggest addition is Evan Ingram, right? Even though he came in free agency, like I cannot wait to see him on the field, see how he changes this offense. And
he's
then
exciting to watch.
Yeah.
He really is.
I'm really excited to see him. And then you've got a receiving core that, you know, had Cortland Sutton, had Marvin Mims, has Troy Franklin and Devon Vele coming back for year 2. Hopefully take a step forward there, grow from year 1 to year 2. I do think a guy like Pat Bryant, you know, as I said earlier in the podcast, when Sean Payton says, hey, I see Michael Thomas traits, like that should get you very excited because
he doesn't say that lightly. He doesn't say things just to say things.
Right. And I think that when you watch Pat Bryant, the hand strength, 1 drop, I believe, on 78 targets, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't have my Surface with me. You got the cheat sheet in front of you. I'm making things up as I go along.
I do. Well, let me throw you a lob. He caught 54 passes for 984 yards and 10 touchdowns. He averaged more than 18 yards per reception and just had 1 drop, despite a career high 78 targets.
I nailed it. 78. I nailed it.
That's why you don't need a tablet. Your tablet's in your head. That's why I call you the guru.
But this is the guy also yards after the catch, like gets open underneath. Red zone target was a big deal. Crunch time, I think 3 touchdowns in the final 2 minutes of regulation or overtime. So he's making plays, and I think when you add him to that group, it's exciting, right? And he feels like a guy that maybe fans are not. And I don't want to say all fans, like I hate to generalize, but like there's a group maybe that, and I'll be honest, like he was not a guy that I was necessarily looking at as like one of these top receivers. But I think the more you watch him and you think about how he fits, and that to me, especially from the offensive side of the ball, fit is more important than like what maybe who like the flashy prospect is, right? And this seems like a guy who fits and could come in and really contribute. And I think at the end of year 1, maybe people are like, how the Broncos get that guy in round 3, right? And so he stands out. Obviously, R.J. Harvey was the first weapon off the board for the Broncos. They traded down twice and got him. But this is a guy that
have you seen his tape?
I'm excited. Well, one, he's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I know
they were saying he was small. I mean, look, all right, I'm not I think you should probably speak on this more, and I say this because like I'm like 5'1", 5'2" on a good day, so it's like me, everyone's gonna look big to a certain extent, but like they call him small, and I saw his tape, and I saw like, and I'm just like, small where?
Yeah,
like,
he runs through holes hard. He's got, I think, where the Broncos have missed maybe a little bit of juice in the run game is like that ability to just have those consistent burst carries, but then also be able to break one.
Yeah.
And so he helps there.
Yeah.
What, 5'8", 205? I think Genty, who everyone's talking about as this machine, and don't get me wrong, he's really good.
Yeah.
I think he's 5'8", 210. So like we're talking about a 5-pound difference there.
Right.
So this is and then you see some of these photos of him like working out at the combine. You're like, man, this dude's jacked. So,
Yeah.
Excited to see him catch the ball out of the backfield as a skill set that they think maybe he hasn't been asked to do as much, but still really capable of doing that.
Yeah.
And the one area, right, for every rookie running back, can you get up to speed in pass protection, because you have to be good in pass protection to get on the field. But I think when you add him to this group, it's now more a complete group. I think it gives it a little bit of explosiveness. And again, I know people externally are like, oh, I thought the Broncos would take her back in round 1, or maybe they'd trade up to the top of round 2. Mm-hmm. This is an area where I think if you look over Sean Payton's career as a head coach, you see some of these guys, whether it's a Pierre Thomas, whether it's an Alvin Kamara, like he knows what he's doing with this position in particular. And so that's where he's got the benefit of the doubt for me of like, I'm going to trust it and believe that he knows how this guy fits. And, I think the Broncos are fired up to get R.J. Harvey, excited to see how he fits in. And then tight end, right?
The philosophy you just said about Sean Payton knowing positions, like the tight end position is one thing I obviously trust him. You have Jimmy Graham that we worked with a lot, and you have this guy coming in who played, I believe, football for like a year. He played basketball, 4 catches, 4 touchdowns. And I was just watching, some of his things, and I'm just like, he's massive. He's like 6'7". He's a massive tight end. And to your point, Sean Payton has a vision where he just can see talent in certain guys. And I think you broke it down earlier where you said, like, it's all about the traits. And what can you build on? And what do you see in that? You're like, that's the holy grail in that player. And once we can unlock that, he's going to be unstoppable. Yeah.
And, we'll see how quickly Caleb Lohner can kind of push for playing time or push for a role. Maybe it takes a little bit of time. Maybe he does adjust quickly. Mm-hmm. We'll see.
You have Evan Ingram to learn from. So, I mean, right. you're coming into a really good position there as well.
And, I think there's playing styles probably a little bit different, but to have those two guys that, eventually down the road, could you have both of them on the field at the same time? I don't know. We'll see. This is a guy that, like you said, 57 snaps in college. It wasn't a whole lot, but had 4 catches for 4 touchdowns. Like that's about as good as you can do there from a
it's called efficiency.
Exactly. So excited to see him. But, yeah, I think when you look at this offense, I think it was not it was already a top 10 scoring offense last year. Obviously, the Broncos wanted to add more weapons, and I think they did that with a Pat Bryant, with an R.J. Harvey. We'll see what sort of impact Caleb Lohner makes, but Evan Ingram. And then I think the other thing that people are maybe – I don't want to say missing, but I do think that the wide receiver group, just the continuity there is going to be big because Troy Franklin should be better. Devon Bailey should be better. Marvin Mims, if you get the Marvin Mims that you got the last 5 games of the year, that's really impressive. And then all of that just makes things easier on Courtland Sutton. And so I think those guys that are returning, they got a little bit of a taste of what postseason football's like, what high stakes games
speed
at the end of December, early January, like what those are like. And hopefully everybody kind of takes that and then takes the next step. And the other thing is Bo should take a step just naturally. And so, I don't know if people thought they were going to go out and sign T. Higgins or that you could have maybe drafted an offensive weapon in the first round. But I really do think from a value standpoint, overall big picture, getting a corner and then being able to get a running back in the second round, from a value big picture standpoint, that's using your picks wisely. And so I do think, as Sean Payton said, you could always use more, and coaches are always going to say we could use more weapons, but he does believe they have enough to kind of take that next step.
Yeah. I mean, the next step is what everyone's anxious for, especially how big of a step was taken this last season with Bo coming in. And obviously with a rookie, you never know what you're going to get. And so for Bo to come in and have the season that he had, just to run down his numbers on my Microsoft Surface tablet, Knicks led all rookie quarterbacks in completions, passing yards, touchdown passes, and total touchdowns. He ranked second in passer rating.
So he must have won Rookie of the Year, right?
That's a different conversation. His 29 touchdown passes were the second most by a rookie in league history. So, I mean, like, you never know what you're going to get in these rookies. And even when coming in, it's funny. I actually just rewatched the cinematic look back of what the season was. I watched it this morning, for motivation. And but in it, the talk at the beginning of the season was just the Broncos are just not a good situation. What are they going to do with this rookie? And then you watch how the season played out, and it's cinema, for one. And second of all, I think you just can never doubt how these players are going to develop. And it's all about being in the right place. And you hit it on the head earlier when you said it's about the fit. And the fit is what kind of adds to the bigger picture versus just getting a guy and bringing him in here and maybe he's not ready or this team isn't built for him to get the best out of him. But when you get a guy that has traits that you feel are going to pair well with your certain position groups and things like that. I'm really excited to just see Jahdae and Pat talk to each other, you mentioned that he joked about having to carry Pat's pads because he didn't call him back before the draft, and now you're teammates and you have that unlimited knowledge from the reigning defensive player of the year. And so I'm really excited to kind of see how that goes, especially with this AFC West division, AFC in general. It's going to be fun to watch, but how excited are you to see the Broncos as a team really compete, not only in the conference, but in the division?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to tinker here and there. We're not done adding players necessarily. You can still make moves, whether it's an undrafted guy making the roster, maybe it's adding a veteran addition between now and training camp or between now and the start of the regular season. Maybe you get somebody off waivers. There's always a few moves to be made still, but for all intents and purposes, this is the majority of the group that's going to be going for it, right? And I think the Broncos have done enough here to put themselves in a spot to compete. And, that's what Sean Payton said. That's what Greg Penner said, George Payton, of, hey, the next goal is to compete for the AFC West. And the Chiefs, as we know, are not going to back down. They're not going away. They've won every single division title since the Broncos won Super Bowl 50. It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
But I also think that this team is positioned well, and we've talked about it last year. One-score games did not go their way. And a lot of those one-score games, like the Chargers in L.A., for example, you got a big lead. Cincinnati, you got a chance to win at the end and in overtime. A lot of these could have gone the other way. Two of those were at the beginning of the year, Bo's first two starts. Yeah. I think when you look at Bo taking a step in year two, another year for some of these young players to develop, this defense adding pieces and getting even better, I do think some of it depends, how does the schedule shake out, which we'll find out in a few weeks, what that looks like. But this is a team that last year they made the playoffs, but I don't think that that I don't want to say they overachieved because I don't think they felt that way, but it was a big achievement to make the playoffs. Yeah. Now it's how do you put yourself in that next tier with a last year I think it was Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore that were in that top tier in the AFC. How can you put yourself in that tier now? And I think for the Broncos, I think they've now got the talent to do it. And you need Bo Nix to play well in year two. You need these guys to show up for him as weapons. Yeah. You need the defense to at least remain where it was and maybe take a step forward. You need to, knock on wood, stay healthy. That's always important. Yeah. But I do think where they added R.J. Harvey, for example, can come in and contribute right away. Running back's a position where you see guys, Bucky Irving, for example, who Chase Edmonds, veteran running back who actually spent a little bit of time with Denver, he said he watched R.J. Harvey and he was like, that reminds me of Bucky Irving. And Bucky Irving led all rookie running backs, went over 1,000 yards last year. And so, if you can put a running back in there for the Broncos who can do that, go over 1,000 yards, maybe gives you 8 to 10 touchdowns, all of a sudden this offense gets exponentially more dangerous. So, yeah, they've got to go do it, right? But I think that there's no reason why, with the talent they have, that they can't do it.
Right.
And so that's exciting if you're a Broncos fan, that you're like, hey, let's get to week one, see if we can push these guys for the division, put ourselves in a conversation with hey, we don't want to just beat the quote-unquote teams we should beat and be competitive with teams in the division. If we have to go play – obviously, Buffalo and Baltimore aren't on the schedule this year, but Cincinnati comes to Denver. Can you beat a Cincinnati when they come to Denver with
with a healthy team.
With an MVP level quarterback in Joe Burrow. Can you go to Arrowhead this year and get it done?
Yeah.
Can you Sean Payton talks about it's hard to find teams that do anything that go 3-3 in the division, right? Like, can you improve your division record and go 4-2, 5-1? Like, you might have to do that to the win of the division. Mm-hmm. They're certainly capable of it. But we've got a lot of time to talk about it between now and the start of the season. But I think this is a good point to be like, this is what this roster is generally going to look like. Yeah. They've got the guys. Now let's put in the work over the offseason and training camp to make it happen.
Yeah, and reading RJ Harvey's stats, you had mentioned on the instant analysis after the draft that he had that 75-yard touchdown where he had that burst. And I watched it, and you have Travis Hunter kind of chase him on this side. He just beats him with the speed right at the end to obviously finish the touchdown. And the Jaguars come to Denver this year, so that's going to be exciting to kind of see, just like that level of talent. You mentioned Ashton Jeanty went to the Raiders, so now the Broncos are going to have to see him 2 times a year. But even that's interesting because when you look at what the Broncos did on defense, they played very well against the run last year. And so in order to bolster that this year, especially with a dynamic back like that, you have to be prepared for every situation. So when you kind of take a step back and look at the overall view of the big puzzle piece that is the NFL draft, I think that this draft may not be as flashy as people has wanted it, but flashy is not always the smartest, right? And I think that this was a very smart, very skillful draft by George Payton and Sean Payton. And I think, just looking at this division, it's only going to get harder. This division is only going to get tougher. They have really good coaches at each, on each team in this division. And I think for the Broncos, it's like, yeah, we made good steps. We beat the Raiders in Vegas for the first time. We swept them for the first time in a couple years. We were right there with potentially could have swept the Chiefs as well. And that's crazy to think at now, but going into it, it seemed almost impossible. So now that you have certain monkeys off your back and certain things where you can kind of let go of these, oh, you've never done this, you've never done that. Now it's, okay, how do we do it again? And I feel like with these guys in this different mindset and this mindset to just build and win, I think what makes the Broncos special is have found a way to develop guys that you do find in the later rounds. And you had mentioned that about kind of like these hardworking guys that you're able to build up, because the last first round you really had on the defense side was Pat.
Yeah. And it's a good point about like getting kind of some of these curses off your back and moving forward. But now there's a different type of pressure because now if you're Bo, you're expected to play well.
Yeah.
And if you're the Broncos, you're expected to win these games. And like if you come out and lose a game you're not supposed to lose, you're going to hear about it in a different way. Like last year it was like, 10 wins is exceeding all expectations. Now you come in and like the playoffs are the expectation. Yeah. And you've set the division as the expectation as well. So there's a different sort of pressure that will come with that.
And people now have tape on you too.
Yeah. And I think that the exciting thing is that you've got Sean Payton, who's obviously won in this league, won when he's been expected to win. And so I'm not sure there's anybody you'd rather have guiding the team, but it will be interesting to see how they handle that because it is a different scenario.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, a couple of months are going to come before we actually see these guys in pads and actually see them going. But the next big thing is obviously rookie minicamp that's coming up in a few weeks. And then the schedule release that's going to happen on May 14th. So make sure you guys follow all the socials for the Broncos. Just looking at some of these opponents, fairly quick, not going into any details, but the home opponents, you got KC, obviously our division. Then we got the Jaguars, the Titans, that's Cam Ward coming to visit, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Bengals, the Packers, and then the aways, you have Houston Texans, the Colts, the Eagles, the Commanders, and the Jets. I mean, you're going to have, like, get your popcorn ready. Like, are you excited? Like, I cannot wait. Like, I know the dates are really important, but like just seeing who the Broncos are going to play and the pieces that were added to that team, I'm very confident with how the Broncos kind of put this team together going into the unknown of how these things are all going to play out.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. And the Washington one is definitely one I'm excited to see. Bo versus Jaden, that'll be fun.
I wonder why. Anyways, all right, well, that'll do it for this edition of Altitude Advantage. Once again, we have all your coverage from the draft on DenverBroncos.com. That includes all the highlights from all the prospects that were drafted in this year's draft. So make sure you guys go there and check it out. As always, I'm your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. Across the table, we have our machine, the guru, the guy that doesn't need a Microsoft Surface tablet, Aric DiLalla. He's our lead writer. So make sure you guys go to DenverBroncos.com and check out all the latest. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you leave your comments. We got to read some next time. Now that we're back in the podcast podcast studio. But as always, we appreciate you, Broncos country.